Check, 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 check. I think I'm recording. Can you check on that for me, Dwayne? All right. Today is week 10, or the start of week 10. We are going to be going over creating a FlexSlider gallery using attachment images. It is not an official assignment. So it's kind of an extra assignment that if you can do it, great. If you can't, don't worry about it, right? Except Trang, you have to do it. You know, Trang, you have to do it for Chris and Dan too. You have to do theirs instead of, because they're obviously not here today. So, I mean, yeah. So, due by the end of the week is search engine optimization for your site. I'm a little behind on grading on this class. I got through half of everybody this past week. Grading 48 students on code. This takes some time. So patience is not just a Guns N' Roses song. Welcome to the jungle. So next week will be an open lab kind of week. There are no presentations in here. Okay. I have not set up the end of the quarter happy hour yet. However, because this class runs from 5 to 7, the end of the quarter happy hour will most likely be about 8 o'clock at Bill's off Broadway. Okay. Who came last time? Dwayne, you were there? Yeah, you were there. What do you mean the Wi-Fi is having problems? Like, what's going on? Hello? Hello? It looks like it's, yeah. Yeah, so we'll do that again. I just need to make the Facebook event and invite everybody. So, section 1, WP content, themes, 170 Spring 01 theme, front page. Okay, so previously, what I have done with FlexSlider is hooked it up, I'm going to say statically. Okay, what do I mean by hooked it up statically? Well, if I were playing the Guess What's in Mike's Head game, I would guess that Mike has written the markup for FlexSlider, starting with div class FlexSlider and div, ul class slides, and then put in a bunch of image tags. And then in those image tags, put the source to the images that are currently in the images folder. Okay, we're still using the blog info template directory path to then go and look into the images folder, right? So one could argue, well, this is kind of dynamic. One could also argue that, hey, Mike, you forgot your semicolons there. How dare you do that? One could argue that this is sort of dynamic because we are dynamically looking into the images folder, right? So currently, if we look at this FlexSlider then, and actually let me get up this lecture here. So currently then, if I go to spring 2701, I have a FlexSlider that works with 3 images. Okay. How many of you have used FlexSlider? Okay. How many of you have not? Okay. How many of you have ever used some kind of a Jquery slider at all? Okay. So for this exercise, right, if you're looking at the lecture for today, create a FlexSlider gallery using attachment images in WordPress without a plugin. Oh my God, is that not a long headline? But look at all the keywords: create, FlexSlider, gallery, attachment, images, WordPress, plugin, without. Right? So it's very SEO, right? In other words, let's do this. Just let me have this right now. WordPress slider. I used to be on page 1. Now, top of page 2 for WordPress FlexSlider. That's not bad, right? True? Thank you. Yes. Thank you. But what if our client wants to do something like this, where, again, how many of you hate the Jet City Improv website by now? How many of you have seen it too many times? Okay. But it is yet again a practical example, meaning their slider here, they have random things that they want to then put into their slideshow here with a tagline or a quote or some kind of piece of text and a learn more button, right? So in terms of allowing the client to be able to edit that, this is where, well, if I have a content management system, should I not allow the client to use the content management system? Meaning, if I tell the client that every time they want to put in a new slide on the home page, they have to send it to me and I have to hard code it here into the code, right? Say management system, if we can't do that, it's kind of like one of my ex-girlfriends used to say, why do you have a cell phone if you never answer it? Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah. You have said that, or somebody said that to you? You've said that. Yeah, that was, yeah. My answer was, I'm trying to get stuff done during the day, so. Anyway, moving on past my issues. So then what we need to do is allow the user or the content manager or somebody to be able to upload photos and have them appear in that gallery. Okay, so I'm not going to log into the Jet City one, but I have done a similar application here on my homepage, where I'm savvy enough, obviously, to do this statically if I wanted to. But what I've experienced by using WordPress on my business site and my school site is that if I set up things programmatically or developmentally, or however you want to say, I've coded solutions, right? Then instead of always trying to hand code stuff to make updates, if I can code the solution to allow updates to be made through the content management system, they just become much easier and quicker for me, right? Imagine if I had to write out each one of my lectures and code everything by hand every single time, right? How inefficient would that be? Okay. So same thing, how inefficient would a slideshow be? So what I've done then here is on the home page, on any page, right? What we can do then is, if we go to the add media here, and we go to upload it to this page, right? These then are attached to the page. So if you upload something to a page, it automatically becomes, you at home are not seeing my air quotes, attached. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, we can then use attachment images however we want to. For instance, if we go to my typography class and we go to projects, I broke the CSS apparently. I'll fix that. You know that whole, you do something and you don't realize you broke something else until you find it? Yeah, look good. It's really embarrassing when you're the web design instructor and that happens in class during the lecture that you're videotaping. Thanks. You are so there for me every single time, Anthony. It's awesome. So if I go back to this page then, and edit this page, essentially what I've done is I have uploaded images to this page and inserted these as a gallery into this page. Okay? So here is me inserting this into this page as a gallery. Now, WordPress has its own way of inserting galleries into pages. You just do it and then not save it. So if I wanted to go add media, upload it to this page, create gallery, page. Now, let's see, where is it? I can't, I see I never do it the old way. They probably have new ways of doing it. They have new ways of doing it. Let's just say that, let me try it again, just one more time. Here we go. I'm not going to do it. They have a standard way that you could do a gallery, right? But whenever I've done a gallery, it didn't allow me to do certain things. So again, what I decided to do was bypass and write my own functions to do what I wanted to do. And so by having this thumbnail gallery shortcode here, well, basically what this does then is go to my functions. What I have done then is created a function that basically sets up an argument for attachments. And if there are attachments, start writing up some markup. For each one of those attachments, put the image into the page, close the markup, return the, so in other words, this is, instead of you using echo statements, saying open, add to open, thumbs, add to thumbs, close, add to close, return, open, thumbs, close, right? How many of you have ever done variables like this with a return statement at the end, where you're then using the concatenation type style of adding to a variable? Have any of you ever seen output? You start output, you add to output, you add to output, you add to output, you add to output, then you return output. Who knows what I'm talking about? One person, Melissa? Yeah? Okay. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. And then using my thumbnail gallery to then use the shortcode for thumb gallery. So in other words, in shortcode, right, this is the function. Convert it to shortcode, right, where then I can put that shortcode into the page editor and it will call that function, thereby getting those attachment images and putting them into a div tag, into a UL tag, into each individual thumbnail, right? So if we go back to here, my thumb gallery, my thumbs, so I'm opening up a div, opening up a UL, then inside I'm opening up a list item, and for each one, I'm putting an image tag inside of a list item with an ID, my thumb, attachment ID. So remember how everything has a number? So this is how you get the number. So div tag, UL tag with the number, anchor tag, image tag. So from here then, if I've put the markup into the page the way I've wanted to, then I can control this slideshow by having my lightbox grab the link and showing it as a bigger lightbox image. Does that make sense? In other words, all I'm doing here is I am writing a function that then goes to see if there are attachments to the page, meaning have I uploaded photos to this page? And if there are, right, then create a set of markup that you need to then use with JavaScript and CSS, okay? So some of you may or may not have seen how many of you have ever seen me bring up this image here? Just a dumb whiteboard drawing that I took a photo of one time. So all I'm doing is I'm getting by PHP, server-side preprocess, outputting the correct HTML that I want to output, meaning I'm outputting a div tag, a UL tag, and list items for each thumbnail, right? Okay. From there, then, I am writing a certain CSS presentation to it, meaning, well, they're all this size, and when you roll over them, it has that little rollover effect, right? Then I'm introducing the interaction, the JavaScript to it, where if I click on one, JavaScript in Jquery is opening it as a lightbox, okay? So therefore, does that make sense to you, right? Yes. So has anybody ever seen this theory right there described to you as, like, I call it the holy trinity of web design, because I'm a recovering all-boys Catholic school child. Yeah? So that's what we're trying to achieve, right? So then when it comes to, well, let's say, what if then, instead of a gallery like this, what if in my typography class, I want to have a different type of slideshow? I still want to upload stuff to the page, but instead I want it to have a click-through slideshow like this, right? Instead of a light box, what would I use? FlexSlider or any other type of slider. Because again, this slider then, how it works is you have a bit of JavaScript and a bit of CSS that accesses markup. So if you understand those core components, then it's not a stretch to, well, if then I want these things to be here, right? If I go to edit page, all those images then are uploaded and attached to this page, okay? So just like the other gallery, what I want to do is, in other words, the WordPress gallery, the out-of-the-box WordPress gallery that looks like they might have changed that I never use, all you do is take a bunch of images, put it into the page, and it writes the markup for you, right? So why not write your own markup based off of what you want to do and control it via CSS and JavaScript, how you want to control it. So if I've uploaded these to the page then, right? And I'm using a piece of short code here to say FlexSlider. Apply all these images in a FlexSlider application. Okay, well, here then is that function. So FlexSlider, here's the short code, which basically goes and accesses add FlexSlider function. Here's the add FlexSlider function. Again, because we are going to be using the post object, right? Don't forget to make this a global variable inside your function, otherwise it won't work. Again, I am setting up a variable called attachments that go get children, the images. If there are attachments, create the opening markup, div class FlexSlider, UL class slides. For each attachments as attachment. Are you guys comfortable with for each loops? Yeah? So you basically take this variable, right? And if we need to access the post object here, right, we are going to then write it using the word attachment. Okay. So for each, write it slides, list item, get attachment image, large, put it in a list item, close the markup, return open slides, close. Now we're going to use echo statements in ours instead of returns. But when it comes to using short code, you have to use return statements. Otherwise, where you put the short code, it will end up at the bottom of the page. Yay, WordPress bugs, right? Whatever that is. Okay. So in theory, does that make sense how what we're trying to do with grabbing that markup? Yeah? Okay, so instead of using short code then, what we're going to do is if I go to my business site and I go to my front page, just like last week, we can then, instead of using short code, we can just write our own function and access it wherever we want to within our template files. So instead of then here, and I make the function, name it differently every time. Doesn't matter what you name it. But if I'm saying get FlexSlider gallery, then, and I go to my functions file, just like I did get Mike's title tag, Okay, so we basically are starting then with writing a function that, this is kind of what I do. I always, when I'm writing a function like that, I'll just then test that I spelled the function correctly and it's working, right, to move on. So basically now what we want to do is we want to, instead of having these images populated by hand, I want to then go to the front page here, go to the Add Media button, upload files, select my files, and this is where currently they're just in my themes folder for no other reason than that's sort of a shuttle place to keep them, right? When I was doing it statically. So I don't want to insert them into page. Do not insert them into page. Do not insert them into page. Do not insert them into page.
Sense that we shouldn't insert them into the page.
Correct.
I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Yes. As well, I am going to give these captions and titles, because I can then use these fields as well. The caption and the description field. Okay. Notice, watch up here. It'll, after every couple of things I do, you'll see it saves the information up there. Right? Saved. 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 In other words, don't look to try to save something. It's going to save it like that. Okay? Do not insert into page. Also, this should be slide 3. Okay. Then I want to update the page. So what I want to do now is I need to go and get those attachments to do something with. So this is where then get my notes. Because, Trang, can you tell Chris that Daddy can't remember everything off the top of his head all the time? What? Oh, yeah, Chris, because Daddy can't remember everything off the top of his head. So what we want to do then is, in our functions file, we can just, no, we don't need, no, let's just leave it there for right now. So because we're going to be using the post object again, in a function like this, don't forget to make the post object a global post. Okay? And from here, what we need to do is set up a variable attachments. I spell that right. Doesn't matter if I spell it right or not, as long as I'm consistent. Okay. But for these attachments, then, what we want to do is use the getChildren function. Okay. So let's go back to my lecture and see if I've spelled it out like that. Challenge. So what led me to originally do this was I was using a slider that a former student of mine had written called Jquery. And he wrote it using shortcode. And so what I had to do was on my blog, on my personal blog, if I wanted a slideshow to always appear at the top of my blog postings that I made, right? I'm not a ham at all. I'm not. I'm not. Drill, baby, drill, arg. So there's Gus. I was making them, the kids a bunk bed a few years ago. So what I wanted to do then was I wanted to automatically just have a slideshow appear at the top of my blog postings, right? And not have to copy and paste shortcode or write shortcode into the editor all the time. So that's what led me to write this as a hard-coded function to where then, I don't like attention at all, Anthony. I don't.
I've read that about you.
Yeah, attention makes me nervous. This is where then at the top of my single.php file, right? This is where I then grabbed the FlexSlider or inserted FlexSlider just before all the content, right? So every time I'd make a posting, if I uploaded images, it would grab the FlexSlider, okay? Anyway, that's the background on it. So when you read this, if you guys read, right? Okay. So we'll get to how FlexSlider functions here in a minute, right? But if you do want to just have a tutorial exercise on how to implement into a static site. So for those of you who have never used FlexSlider, under my HCD 532 section of my site, there is create an image slider with Jquery. Step 1, download FlexSlider. Step 2, get in place FlexSlider files, like the JavaScript file, like the fonts, like the FlexSlider CSS. So in my themes folder then, fonts, FlexSlider fonts, scripts, FlexSlider JavaScript, CSS, FlexSlider.css. Okay. So then I'll just talk about it right now very quickly. So from there, in your header file, right, just like any other jQuery, don't forget to load the jQuery file. I've noticed I got an error when I loaded the latest 3.0 jQuery library. It didn't play well with FlexSlider. I don't know if they've resolved that yet. But then to access the JavaScript, FlexSlider JavaScript, template directory, scripts, jQuery, FlexSlider.js, right? So it goes and looks for that JavaScript file. Style sheets, this is where then FlexSlider CSS, blog info template directory, looks into and goes and accesses FlexSlider CSS. And then lastly, trigger the FlexSlider, window.load, anonymous function, go access the class of FlexSlider, trigger the function of FlexSlider, right? Which then goes and digs into the FlexSlider JavaScript file to then trigger FlexSlider to work. Everybody, you all understand that to a certain extent? Okay, great. So now if I'm here, what I want to do then is I want to get attachments, right? And in order to get attachments, what we need to do is use the get children function. Okay. So basically what we're doing instead of saying children array is we are saying attachments are to get children. And we have a certain set of arguments that we want to pass through here. Okay. The arguments are post parent. So what do you think our post parent is going to be? Correct. So let's start getting this set up. Attachments. Get children. Right? So we're going to start off by using the get children function. We are then going to get the arguments using an array like we have been so far, right? So far everything looks like, oh, I'm noticing a pattern here, okay? The first argument that we want to pass through is, what is the post parent? In other words, we're getting children for what post object, okay? And so if we want to get children for the post object that we're upon, we have to then say post parent, because that's the associative array key. What should we write here? How do we make sure that we're accessing the page we're on? Correct. Post ID. Right? So again, this right here is why. If we're using the post variable in this function, this is why we've had to say global post. Okay? So we're starting off by saying we are going to go and access the children of the ID or the children for which page we are currently on. So in other words, this function, if I am on the home page, go get the children for this home page, okay? Whatever children we're trying to access. So we then need to go back here and say post type. What post type are we going to access? Because, let's say it like this. If I want to do this, write out the title, the featured image, the excerpts, and the read more link for these subpages of services, right? What post type am I accessing? Because these are children of the services pages. What post type? Give me examples of post types, Trang. So what post type of these am I accessing? Page, right? So if I look at this function, that function is my get child pages function. So this one, I set it up a little bit differently where I was using the query posts, but still, right? Post parent, post ID. So parent of wherever you are, right? Post type, page. So here we are then going to say, post type. I just love that I quiz you while we're doing this stuff, right?
Yes.
It helps though, doesn't it? It gets you thinking. All right. So, Trang, what post type am I accessing here? What? Why would I be accessing a page? What are flex sliders? What are the things in flex sliders? Okay. Close. Attached. Attached media. So in this case, we are going to use the post type of attachment. Then there is another, so attachments come in various flavors, PDFs, video, etc. So you may not see in here the reference to it, but if we look up post mime type, now there, post mime type. Allowed mime types. Well, let's go to that one, see if it has anything in it. Get post mime type. Yeah, we're not gonna, screw it. let's just say it like this. We then have to, as well as post type, we have to say post mime type. What do you think the post mime type is, string? That's good. That's good. Annoying.
Probably French like.
Image. So with that then, we are saying that we are getting children for the post ID, whatever page we're on. We are getting attachments, and more specifically, we are getting images. Okay? So then we need to write some kind of a loop. Okay? So we could have probably done the query post stuff, right? I don't know if that would work with the these arguments here, but because we've said attachments, let's then start by writing for each attachments as attachment. This may or may not work without the if statement. So I'm going to, let's just start that over again. So what we first need to do is we need to check if there are attachments, right? In other words, don't trigger this function unless there are attachments, because we may get an error if we're on another page. Because again, this potentially could get triggered anywhere, right? If we're using it properly. So let's say if attachments then we want to get attachments, right? And in order to get attachments, we want to then write the for each and spell it correctly. Okay. Where now, if there are images for each one of them, we want to go get them. Okay. So now we want to basically, we can do different things. I can basically start writing out image tag with the source attributes and go get the source attribute. Okay. However, instead of doing that, there is a function in WordPress, because they've done this before. Do you like how WordPress just basically says, oh, you need this? Well, we know you need this. So we're
It's
going
like
to,
they've done it.
it's like they've done this. It's like they've set up this whole system over a series of years. So we want to, what are we trying to get, Trang? Tell it to me in the WordPress language. What type of attachment? So say that to me again. What am I trying to do? Get attachment images. So let's look that up. I'm not trying to be an asshole for asshole's sake, right? What I'm trying to do is basically get you guys to think about how WordPress talks. And WordPress is going to be, from here on out, is going to be your web design partner, right? So you're going to be married to WordPress. And if you don't get along with WordPress and know how to talk to WordPress and communicate with WordPress, your marriage is not going to go right. Right? How many of you that really hits home? Stop saying that kind of stuff, Mike. So basically what we want to do is say WP get attachment images. So what I'm trying to do is trying to get you to use WordPress's lingo to search for how are you going to do that. So you can see that somebody has already searched for WordPress get attached image URLs. So that's where you could use the URL and pass it through the source attributes. But what if we want it to write out the whole image tag, etc., right? So that's where then we find WP get attachment image, okay? So this is where then the parameters are attachment ID, size, etc., etc. So this is where I could have written, and you may have seen this written as, in my notes, like this, okay? I did some testing because I was like, why? That's too long. And when I did some testing, specifically when I was doing it for my school sites, this is where then I shortened it to attachments as attachment, and instead of using this, I was able to pass it as this. Does that make sense? So instead of saying post ID, this is where post is now attachment, because attachment is a post type, and we've said global post. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
It sort of makes sense to me, but it works. So I move on with my life and use that. Have you ever said to yourself, ooh, I wonder if this works. Let's just try it. It does. I have no idea exactly why. I understand mostly why it works, but what is a black hole? I don't really know, and I don't want to lay awake at night thinking about that too much. Otherwise, my logic board is going to fry. With me, Dwayne? Yeah. So I am then going to use WP get attachment image attachment ID, because again, this right here, how I understand it, this attachment is basically now the, what do you call this in a for each loop? What's the technical term when you say this as that? Anybody know? It's like you're substituting it, right? What's the technical term?
Aliasing, isn't it?
Dwayne?
Because in the SQL call, if you do something as something, and we're aliasing it.
That sounds logical. Dwayne, can you look that up for me? Okay. So basically then, instead of saying post ID here, right, we are saying attachment ID. And then the size that we want to pass through would be, I believe, full. Let's do large for right now. Okay. So now, hopefully what should happen is we should see, or WordPress should kick out now a whole bunch of images, or those 3 images, okay? Let's see if that happened. Yes. Ta-da! Okay. So because I have these 3 images uploaded to the page as attachments, and we've basically written a function that says, go get children of the post ID that are attachments, specifically images. We have now done that trick. So now, how do we get those images to be used as a FlexSlider, right? Again, well, we have just completed much of the markup, not all of it, right? Because how does JavaScript interaction and CSS, how does that work? Well, because on window.load, go access the class of FlexSlider, right? So if we look at, we actually Google slider, FlexSlider,
But that been considered synchronous or asynchronous?
synchronous. It's not Ajax. So, FlexSlider, download it. Step 1, link your Jquery. Step 2, add the markup. Step 3, hook up the slider, window.load, FlexSlider. So go access the class of FlexSlider and trigger the FlexSlider function. Step 4, tailor it to your needs. Pass through arguments in that function if you want to, right? I'm not going to get super into that, but you can control some of the arguments, the speed, start the slider automatically, not start it automatically, etc. So now if we go back here, right, we have gotten our images. So now we need to put those images within the FlexSlider markup like we had before, right? Because if we go here and inspect, in my middle div tag, I have a bunch of image tags that WordPress has generated based off of how it kicks things out, right? That function puts it in an image tag with the width and height, so on and so forth, yada, yada, yada. On we go. So now what we have to do is, if there are attachments, this is where then I want to, because this is the image tag. Generate image tag, right? FlexSlider then works as an image tag inside of a list item, inside of a UL class slides, inside of, right, div class FlexSlider. So I need to then generate div. I almost spelled something out right there. Class slider, FlexSlider. Okay. As well, at the end here, I want to close that markup. Okay. So now, is it something I said, you guys? Don't everybody leave. So now, div class FlexSlider, right? Next thing we want to put in there is the UL class slides. Did you count to 3? Just say yes. Div UL So now we want list items around each image. And because FlexSlider works off of the list item in the UL class of slides in the div of FlexSlider, and I've hooked up FlexSlider successfully already. I now have a FlexSlider. What if I want the caption for each one of these slides? Inside this list item, open up a P tag, close that P tag, and set up some concatenation. Meaning, I want to go get the caption for that image. This is where then I am going to use the function get post field. Again, trying, learning how to talk to WordPress, right? If I am saying I want to then get the caption right there, right, of an image, I might search for something in the Google machine. Again, it's very important that you learn how to search for what you need in WordPress, right? So get WP get image caption field. And this one may not be super straightforward to start out with, but when searching like this, there's that get attachment source, get attachment URL. Get post meta. Well, the one that I found that worked was get post field. So get post field for whatever field for whatever post, right? So I wanted to get the field of, and this is going to be a little odd, but the field that I want to get is, let's see if it has it. They're not doing that great of a job anymore. Like, give me the arguments right here. Give me the arguments right there. You guys are making it harder on me, WordPress. Well, let's say it like this. I want to then get post field of not caption, but post excerpt. Right. Huh? We're not getting the excerpt field. I don't. You know when your husband Trang just does something that you don't understand, and he's just like, that's the way I do it. And you don't understand it, but you just let him have it? You know what I'm talking about, right? Does that help your marriage? It doesn't? It helps the marriage to WordPress. So moving on, we are then going to say, here's where we would say post ID. But again, because we've used the alias of attachment, that's the word probably I'm looking for, alias. Right? Did you look that up, Dwayne? Okay. 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 Right. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to change that then to attachment ID. And so hopefully this then should now I have the caption. So what I could do is take this caption and put it up here, right? Using a little bit of absolute positioning, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Does that make sense? Lastly, what if I want to order these differently?
Write a function for that.
In other words, remember when we were talking about images and we were saying that you can move stuff, right? Now that I move stuff, let's see if it's going to order it differently. Nope. So we have two more arguments then here in the get children. Well, let's just see if this one without the other works. Order by. Menu order. So I want this one to be first. I want that one to be last. So it looks like I'm going to need the order. I don't know if I need to put that in, sending in, let's see. WP yeah, I do. So I can order by and order. So basically, I'm not going to look too thoroughly for it. But basically, I want to order by ascending, 1, 2, 3, and order by menu order, right? How I've placed it in the editor. Okay. Let's see if that works. If it doesn't, then I'm going to give up for the day because it should work. Let's make sure that got uploaded to this page. Okay, so that should be first page. There we go. So now it's the scenery, that one, and then that one. So if I decided that, you know what, I actually want this one to be first, and then I update the page, review the page, that one should be first. Make sense? Any questions? Oh yeah, Trang, why don't you ask me that really important question you were going to ask me?